What hasn't fluctuated is the offensive production, and I want to focus on that. They jump off the page, and for not very good reasons. This is an offense that has yet to reach 20 points, has scored no more than 16 in a given game. The last 2 games has failed to get to double digits, and they have yet to score a touchdown in the last 2 games. The last time they scored a touchdown was in the fourth quarter against the Bears when Dion Lewis ran in from a yard out. And, yes, people are going to talk about Paul. They're going to get the Dallas Cowboys defense this week, and the Cowboys defense has struggled immensely, gave up 49 points to the Browns. I get that. But my response, Paul, is until we see the Giants offense turn the corner, I don't think this team is in any position to take for granted any defense that they're going up against and thinking that that's going to be the magic potion that's going to automatically and quickly solve the riddle.
Well, you're right. I mean, this is a show-me league, okay? And until you are able to put some certain things on tape, opposing teams and their coordinators and their players are not going to buy in. They have to be able to respect that you can do X, Y, and Z before they are going to start changing their philosophies in terms of how they are going to either attack or defend you. And at this point, the Giants offensively have not shown anybody anything that they need to worry about that would cause them to change up anything in terms of their defensive philosophies. Period.
You look at this Giants offense, specifically putting the Rams game under the microscope. They have been able to move the football at times. That hasn't been the issue. The issue has been these self-inflicted wounds with the penalties and the combination, of course, of the turnovers. There was only one in the Rams case, but it came when the Giants had an opportunity to potentially put themselves in a position to tie the game with a 2-point conversion and force overtime. But, here's an example, and I bring this up all the time, Paul. You look at time of possession. The Giants held the ball for nearly 7 more minutes than the Rams, okay? You like that, okay? You want to be +6, +7 in that category, right? But let's take it a step further. Okay, so my next follow-up question would be, well, what did time of possession equate to? Great, you had the ball for an extra 6 or 7 minutes, and then you look at that 33-plus minute time of possession equaled 9 points. That's when, to me, Paul, time of possession is absolutely irrelevant if you're not scoring touchdowns. And I want to get off topic slightly here to bring in another team as an example, because this is something that you could say it's not just the Giants. The Falcons last night against the Green Bay Packers in the second Monday night game, after Green Bay took an early 7-0 lead, the Falcons get a stop on a 4th and goal at the 1. The Packers were just about to punch it in. Big, huge defensive stop. You're saying to yourself, Paul, hey, this is a momentum turner. Atlanta then puts together a 20-play, 94-yard drive. Let me say that again. 20 plays, 94 yards. Paul, they milked over 10 and a half minutes away. They settled for 3 lousy points. And then what happens? Aaron Rodgers and the Packers respond with a touchdown drive that took half the amount of time, 5 minutes. And what happened with the Rams? After the Giants held the ball for 33-plus minutes, I know it was a broken coverage, but the reality is it shows up in the box score one way. That's a 55-yard touchdown pass to Cooper Kupp. So the opposition scores in a blink of an eye. You take a year and a Sunday holding on to the ball. You settle for field goals. Once again, Paul, I don't want to hear anything about time of possession anymore.
Well, I disagree with you, Lance. I think that time of possession is actually extremely critical, because if you don't win the time of possession, you don't put yourself in an opportunity to compete for the game. The Giants, because they won the time of possession against the Rams, they were in position where they could have tied the game on the final drive as they got down into the red zone. If they don't win the time of possession during the course of that Sunday, they're blown out. They don't even have a chance, because Goff and company have the ball too long. They're doing too many things. Your defense is on the field too much. They can't hold up forever. So here's where you're right. You do have to maximize your efficiency. When you have chances inside the red zone, you need to cash in and get 7s instead of 3s. So I absolutely agree with your premise that you must maximize your scoring opportunities. Nobody's going to disagree with you on that at all. But you're being a little short-sighted and not recognizing that the bonus part to that equation is if you can keep your defense off the field and give them a rest and give them an opportunity to recoup and to re-energize, knowing that the other team's offense is incredibly dangerous and can absolutely beat you into the ground, well, I mean, that's the extra cherry on top. So to be perfectly frank with you, both of us have a right to feel as though those things are priorities. I just happen to think that both of them together are really the entire pie with the whipped cream and the cherry, and if you can get it all, you want to get it all. And I think it's foolhardy just to say, well, you got to get your sevens and time of possession is not important and not relevant. I think you downplay that way, way too much.
Well, the reason I downplayed it is because the coulda, woulda, shoulda game doesn't win football games, Paul. I mean, you could argue, yeah, the Giants put themselves in a position to perhaps tie the game and force overtime, but the bottom line is they didn't get it done. And this is a results-oriented business. You don't get brownie points in the standings because there's a little star saying, okay, well, you won the time of possession against the Rams to put yourself in a position to win the game.
You're missing the point again. It's got to be the combination of both. If you really want the entire enchilada, then you want to win the time of possession, plus you want to make sure you get sevens instead of threes. See, what you're failing to realize here, Lance, you're being a little short-sighted here. What you're missing is that if you don't control the time of possession, especially against explosive offensive teams, your chances of even being in that game in the fourth quarter are decreased. And I'd rather take my chances being in games week in and week out because at least I might be able to steal a couple of them. If I'm constantly losing the time of possession, well, then guess what? Chances are I'm not even going to be in those games. And that's not good.
Well, I would say that that's still a generic statement in saying you're not going to be in games. I mean, every game is different in terms of the storyline and the game flow. And the Giants' defense, in fairness, held its own against the Rams. And there were some times where the Rams put together some drives where the Giants managed to make some stops. For example, you go to the drive a little bit later after the 12-play touchdown drive. The Rams put together a 15-play, 47-yard drive. It ate up 7 minutes, and the Giants' defense made a stance and held them to a field goal. And this was when the Rams got into Giants territory. They were right in the red zone, and they forced a 32-yard field goal. So they were preventing the explosive plays, whether the Rams were 3 and out or they put together lengthy drives. I mean, keep in mind, the longest play that the Rams had was the 55-yard touchdown pass to Cooper Kupp. Outside of that, everything was 16 yards or less, whether it be on the ground or through the air. So for a game where, yes, there was a noticeable change in terms of how long the Giants had the ball versus the Rams, I never got to the point where I felt the Giants' defense, no matter what the Rams were doing, was with their backs against the wall, and you said, oh, no, this is going to be dangerous territory. They were fairly consistent from start to finish, especially after that touchdown drive that they allowed.
Well, you had to feel that way, partly because they weren't being stressed by having to be on the field too much. Look, I'm going to give you a number, and this is indisputable. The lowest 11 teams, there are only 11 teams in the NFL whose average time of possession is less than 30 minutes a game. There are 11 of them. Do you want to take a guess how many of them have a 500 record or better?
Oh, I'm sure it's definitely reflected in terms of the bottom of the
Just
standings.
take a guess.
Of the 11, how many?
Of the 11.
I would probably say 7.
All 11 have losing records today. All 11, Lance. All 11. Not one of the teams averaging less than 30 minutes a game is even at 500. Not one.
I'm bringing up the list right now, and I could tell you, just perusing that list, the other common trait between all of these teams is they're also not very good in turnover differential.
Well,
because, for example,
natural,
Dallas and Houston are dead last
but
and
isn't that
second
natural?
to last in time of possession, and both of those teams are bottom 3 in turnover differential as well this
season. This is why it's such a spider web. Remember, the National Football League, the game of professional football, and college football and high school football to some degree as well, although it's not obviously as scientific as when you get to the best of the best. The game is a spider web. It is a domino effect. So, yes, of course, most of these teams in these bottom 11, not only do all of them have losing records, I didn't even take a look at the turnover ratio, but I'm going to take a pretty good guess that probably all 11 are minus in turnover ratio too. And why? Because if you're minus in turnover ratio and you're giving up possessions, you're going to lose time of possession. 1 and 1 equals 2, Lance. It's the same thing. It's all part of the same string, the same spider web.
100%. They're synonymous with one another. And the Giants killer.
See, so you do agree with me.
Well, I never said that. That was a fair point. 100%. I think that they're together. But what's happening with the Giants is it's the double whammy. It's the fact that they're not maximizing their possessions because they're giving up possessions due to turnovers. But then the possessions, which are far and few, where they put together lengthy drives, something is then preventing them from punching it in, whether it be the lack of execution, which is obviously the most obvious. Number two would be the penalties, which are also far and few, but come at the worst possible time. And you and I talked about penalties last week coming out of the Niners game. Well, here we go again. 2 of your 4 penalties come right when you're knocking on the door in a 10-3 game here, and you have an opportunity to maybe tie instead of make it 10-6, and you have the illegal formation and the Caden Smith false start, you're going backwards instead of forward. So you're exerting so much effort as it is just to pick up a first down with your offense at this point. And now when you're faced with having to pick up 15 yards or 20 yards, you know that it's a struggle to get 10. Why would you ever want to put your team in a position to have to do it 15 and 20 yards? So, I mean, you combine both of those forces, no doubt about it. But I think the turnovers have been extremely killer because this team needs as many possessions, as many at-bats, Paul, as humanly possible to maximize their chances of putting points on the board. And when you give away gifts to the opposition and opportunities like that, then you're always going to be digging yourself out of a hole.
I give you another very interesting number, too. Of those 11 teams, 4 of them are actually top 10 in red zone efficiency, scoring on more than 70% of their scoring opportunities. Arizona, Jacksonville, Dallas, and Minnesota are all top 10 in red zone offense at over 70%. But because they are in the bottom 11 of average time of possession, they have a losing record. It's just, I mean, again, I think your point is certainly valid. I just think that the time of possession is a heavier point than the one that you're making. But they do work hand in hand, as do the turnovers, because it is a spider web. That's just the way it is.
I mean, for example, I'm looking at the TOP rankings here. Kansas City, which I know is a very unique team, but they're 21st in time of possession. Why? Because they could score in the blink of an eye. New Orleans is 20th. So, I mean, there's 2 teams that have very good offenses. They're not ranked very high because they have the ability to score very quickly. They could have a 3-play drive, go for the home run, and it ends up as a touchdown. If you don't have that ability, you're further putting yourself in a precarious spot. And the Giants right now are struggling just to score with lengthy drives. So we're not even talking about where the home run plays are. Right now they're just trying to solve the riddle of if you put together a 13-play, 14-play drive, you find a way to punch it in.
Well, I think we all know that if you're a super, super talented team and you're explosive as all heck, and, let's just say, for example, a team like Green Bay, or a team like San Francisco when they've got all their weapons going, or a team like the Rams, okay? There are teams that have really good offenses. I mean, certainly New Orleans, I think they would be, you would consider them a very explosive offense. These teams don't necessarily, because they have so much firepower and can score so quickly, literally at will, they don't have to play the game of time of possession. They don't necessarily have to play the game of looking at their red zone percentage. And consequently, they can even have 2 turnovers and still come back and beat you because they can score so quickly and so often. Those are the teams that are just so loaded with offensive firepower that they don't need to worry about these conventional issues that I'm talking about. But if you're one of the other teams, one of the have-nots, one of the not elite teams, if you will, this core basic philosophy about time of possession, turnover ratio, and red zone becomes even more critical than it does to the other teams who can put up points like a pinball machine.